Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Welcome back to Between the Sheets. We're going to have a fun conversation here today, and I'm excited to have Dr. Claudia Six, who is a relationship counselor and clinical sexologist. She has over 35 years of experience helping people turn disconnection into desire. She is the author of Erotic Integrity: How to Be True to Yourself Sexually, and her work goes far beyond the mechanics of sex. Dr. Six helps people explore authenticity, communication, and the subtle human ache of loneliness, even inside long-term relationships. So welcome, Dr. Six. So nice to have you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about how you went into the world of sex and helping people have better sex, better communication, all of that.
Well, my origin story is that I was born and raised in Paris, France. I came to the US when I was 19. I don't sound it. I don't have the sexy French accent, but I did grow up in France. And my parents, probably figuring they wanted to buy themselves some time, figured they weren't going to give me a birds and the bees lecture. They were just going to wait for me to ask questions. Well, I asked a lot of questions at a very early age because by the time I was 5, apparently I had all the information. And in France, Catholic widows wear black. And
Okay.
so my French grandmother would take me to go visit her Catholic widow friends and have coffee. And at the age of 5, I was apparently explaining how babies were made.
I love
And
that.
then as a teenager, I was a late bloomer, but I had all the information. And so my friends were going out on dates and having sex, and I was the one telling them, don't do anything you don't want to do. Make sure you're on birth control. Make sure you experience pleasure and it's not just all about him. So even though I had no hands-on experience, I had more information than they did. And they tended to find that very helpful. And then in college, again, I was talking to friends, and one day one of them said, "God, Claudia, you always say the right thing. You make me feel so much better. You should be a sex therapist." And I was like, well, and about the same time, my dad was exploring psych testing because he was wanting to hire employees for his business.
Mhm.
And he wanted to see, what kind of optimal circumstances people needed, to perform well at work. And so I got to be the guinea pig and I got to take a lot of psych tests. And the upshot was that I wanted to help people. So, I knew that, art therapy or, speech therapy wasn't going to be my thing. And so at the time, I had been a water ski instructor at Club Med, and then I was a ski bum in Aspen.
Okay.
And so I kind of wrapped up my season in Aspen, and then I went back to school to take prerequisite psych classes because I'd had a degree in geography, which, there were a lot of guys in the geography department. It was very interesting, but I don't know what I was going to do with it.
Right.
I was lost and confused. So I took a bunch of psych classes, like a year and a half worth of prerequisite psych classes. And then I got a master's in psych, and then I got a PhD in clinical sexology. So that's my story.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's definitely something that we evolve into. It's not necessarily something that we go to school and say, I'm going to grow up and be a part of the sex world.
Yeah. And you're a little younger than me, but back then, there were like 3 schools in the whole U.S. There was Dr. Ruth on the radio late at night, and that was it. There were no sex therapists.
Right.
It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah, and not good quality sex education either. So then people they don't even know what they don't know, and then they don't know how to talk about it or process it or any of that. So it's definitely been a huge help to have people such as yourself come into this field. What are some of the reasons people come to see you, your most frequent?
Well, I see mostly couples who are disconnected, is how I would sum
Mm.
it up. So, most of the people I see are couples with young kids because sex begets children and children are the
Mhm,
death of sex. And they haven't had sex since the birth of the last child, 5, 10, 15 years ago.
mhm,
I see empty nesters. The kids have left home and they've neglected their relationship and they look at each other like, oh, okay, well, now what do we do? Do
mhm,
we, kind of pull this together or do we call it quits? And then I see a lot of menopausal couples where her libido has shifted
mhm.
dramatically and he is still a vibrant sexual being.
Yeah.
And where do they go? So I can see that, the BDSM and the kinky people and the polyamory and the infidelity and, all that. But I see, it always comes down, couples are disconnected. That's what it
Mhm.
usually comes down to.
Yeah. How do you see that kind of play out? What are some of the things people are coming and telling you that's going on in their relationship where you're like, ah, there's that disconnect again?
I've been doing this 35 years. If I had a dollar for every time somebody called me and said, we don't communicate.
Mm.
And I tell people always communicate.
Hmm.
You just don't like the communication you're getting.
Yeah.
Because couples always the silent treatment is
Hmm.
communication.
Sure.
Rolling your eyes is communication. So I see a lot of people who say, "Oh, we're best friends, we have a solid relationship, but we haven't had sex in years and we really wanna stay together, so we need to figure out, what's getting in the way so that we can have a great sex life."
Hmm.
That's I'd say, the crux of what I hear. And
Yeah.
and the circumstances are always different, every couple's different.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I have patients in the urology world who it's related to, post prostate cancer. The guys can't get the erection. Or, like you were saying earlier, the women with a menopause, sometimes it's their libido. Sometimes it physically hurts because
Yeah.
of dryness and other things that they haven't learned how to manage yet. And so, I definitely see a variety of reasons to not have sex for an extended period of time in my own practice. So I'm sure that, my view of everything is narrowed into the urology and sex med world, that there are plenty of other things with finances and kids and businesses and so many reasons why people are, it's an easy box to check, but it's also the easiest one to let go. Kind of like
Yeah.
working out. Like, it's one of those things where once you're in your routine and you're doing it and it's a regular part, you want to do more, you want to be healthier, but it's also the first thing that you can let
Mhm.
slide when a day gets too busy and then all of a sudden it's weeks, it's months, it's years. And getting back into that is really difficult. So what are some of the ways that you start to help people find that reconnection, that common ground again?
Well, I did my second TED Talk last May, and that's a lot of what I talk about. So there's different aspects that I address.
Mhm,
So one is, um, faulty beliefs. We all
mm,
have, a big faulty belief about ourselves. And then I say, a bunch of other little ones just to keep it interesting. But you can call it a script, a button, a story, a trigger, whatever it is. It's all the same. And there's like 10 or 12 of them, all kind of variations on the theme of I'm not good enough. But these faulty beliefs develop in early infancy. And this
mm,
isn't about throwing your parents under the bus, it's just part of being a human being. We all have one.
mhm,
And then we tend to take it out into the world and manifest people and circumstances that confirm our faulty belief. I'll
mm,
always be, I'll always be betrayed. I'm not good enough. I have no
mhm,
voice. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
And we tend to pair up with somebody for whom, so I explain to couples how it makes perfect sense that they pick each other, and it makes perfect sense that they get stuck the way that
mm,
they do. So that's one of the first things I do is identify faulty beliefs. Trauma, it's a word that gets used a lot, but
mhm,
Gabor Mate, who's a trauma expert, says trauma isn't necessarily bad things that happen to you. it can be good things that should have happened and didn't.
Mm.
So, for
Sure.
example, if you have, a mother who has postpartum depression or
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason isn't emotionally available to attune with a baby, then that child develops, some, problematic attachment style, like, avoidant, anxious, yada, yada. So those
Mm-hmm.
attachment styles, everybody knows about attachment styles these days. There's communication, they always, you always do this and you never do that. That's communication. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm sort of glancing at oh yeah, erotic integrity, the title of my book. So I often don't even use these words, but erotic integrity is about knowing who you really are as a
Mm.
sexual being. And there's a lot of suffering I have found that comes from people trying to be a square peg in a round hole, like trying to
Mm-hmm.
be the way they think they're supposed to be sexually, hetero, vanilla, monogamous, missionary,
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much more to who people are. So I kind of unpack, like, who are you really as an
Mm.
erotic being? Even if you don't think you've had permission, like, who are you really? And then have them accept whatever they discover about themselves. And then we talk about how to have their sexuality fit into their life in a way that works and is
Mm-hmm.
authentic. So erotic integrity isn't you're good, you're bad, you're in, you're out, you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. It's more about how to be sexually authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes couples get twisted up because one person is a certain way erotically, but hasn't given themselves permission. And
Mm.
deep down, they know that that's what really turns them on. So maybe they're fantasizing about that while they're having obligation sex with their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And their partner's like, this is, I forgot to ask you, can I swear?
Oh yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
So the partner's getting a mercy fuck because, their partner's fantasizing about being tied up and doesn't want to talk about it. It's like, that's unnecessary suffering. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah,
So that's sort of the
absolutely.
long answer.
Yeah, no, but I love the 3 points, and what struck me so much was you talking about trauma isn't necessarily something that we did experience, but something that we did not get. That's fascinating to me because the talk about trauma is always something that happened to you, something you experienced, someone did something to you and you were violated in some type of way, and we always talk about how to overcome that, but how do you really get past what didn't happen? You had these expectations or things that you think should have happened or definitely should have, like you're saying, the mother connecting with her child. How do you start to work through that?
You take people back to that experience as a child and have them understand that their coping mechanism that's now problematic in relationship was a very good survival mechanism as a
Mm,
child. And to have
mm,
compassion for that little child who may not have had anybody to turn to,
mhm.
didn't have a parent or a coach or a
Yeah.
priest or a parent of a friend or was suffering and didn't have anybody to tell and didn't have anybody to back them up. And so we develop these emotional patterns that we then take into relationship, but then they're
Mhm.
problematic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. And I always automatically in the sex world, I go to traumas that are related to sex when you were raped or you were sexually assaulted or incest or anything like that that can be extremely damaging, specifically for someone who maybe then has a difficult time even wanting sex or something because that was particularly an issue. But it's interesting as I'm listening to you talk how I can see that these issues way back when are more in line with, like you were saying, the attachment theories, attachment styles, and things like that, that also then affect your sex life and your relation, your emotional intimacy and physical intimacy with someone. And a lot of us need both. I mean, I personally love sex, but I am liking it a hell of a lot more when I'm emotionally connected to my partner and we have that foundation versus dating couple dates in and you don't really have that connection yet. So, how do you work with couples with the erotic intimacy? Let's focus on that. So, you wrote a book helping people kind of figure this out. So, how do you help them kind of start to open up and realize that there's more to what they've been told about sex, or maybe more than what they think that they want to explore?
Well, with every client, the first session, I talk to them about what's the problem? How have you addressed it? Whether it's an individual or a couple, like what have you attempted? Like, where you give me sort of the lay of the land, sort of a like here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second session, I do a history session. Now, most therapists, I also do 90-minute sessions. Most therapists
Mm,
do 45 or 50. I just do an hour and a half. Let's just get in there and just get something
yeah.
done. And so most therapists do history kind of in little bits and pieces over a period of months.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to do one big download. So I do one history session and I don't necessarily get to everything,
Mm-hmm.
but it invariably goes where it needs to go. And I do those individually. So if I'm working with a couple,
Okay.
I do those separately. So if there's anything they want to tell me without their partner present, and then I ask about sexual history and I ask about, their first sexual experience. And then I
Mm-hmm.
look to see if they answer that as an individual first sexual experience with themselves or with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I always ask, what information did you get about sex? Spoken, unspoken,
Mm-hmm.
implicit, or explicit? Like we get messages from the culture at large,
Mm-hmm.
and then in America, not so much in France, but in America, all the guys, there was a Playboy. Dad's Playboy was stashed in the garage or in the underwear drawer.
Yeah.
And that's like, and then they found it. I mean, that's like 9 guys out of 10. That's
Yeah.
and like what messages did they get about their own sexuality that they
Mm-hmm.
internalized? In America, it's mostly negative,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we don't do a good job of making sex a positive thing, talking about pleasure. It's very much a dutiful thing, a procreation thing. That's what you learn about. And you don't, I mean, I didn't learn about that it should be pleasureful and that you should enjoy it and you should experiment and try different things, not only with your partner, but by yourself and figure out what feels good and all of those things. And it's one of the things that I tell my patients all the time, especially women, because I think, our generations, women weren't really told to masturbate. That was
Mhm.
shameful. That was something that you either did and didn't talk about or you just didn't do. And I love to tell my women, go home and figure out what works for you, what feels good, what doesn't, what turns you on, what doesn't, all of those things, because how are you going to tell your partner what you like if you don't know with yourself?
Yeah, a lot of maybe not so much now because there's so much more information available, but a lot
Hmm.
of younger women in particular, and maybe now it's older women, it's like they don't know themselves. They don't know their
Hmm.
body and they just kind of like hand it over, like, here, you
Hmm.
figure it out. And
Yeah.
the guy's like, well, tell me how to pleasure you. And she's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Eh, it's like it's a gift for everybody. If a woman now, and same with a guy, if a woman,
Yeah.
if a guy knows how he likes to be pleasured,
Mhm.
then you can set everybody up for success and, and share with your lover. But also I have, in terms of, sex information, I have a pet peeve about the word protection
Mm.
because it's negative, like sex is dangerous. It's like, how about just call it birth control?
Mhm.
It's not protection, you gotta wear protection. It's like it's not this big dangerous thing. And then the
Yeah.
word performance, if you performance is entertaining an audience. So unless you're an exhibitionist, you're probably not entertaining an audience. So lose
Sure.
the word performance. Think about
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, I think that's a great reframing because a lot of people, especially like my guys who are dealing with erection issues and things like that, or they're orgasming too quickly, not quickly enough, those kinds of things, they start to get a lot of anxiety around that,
Yeah.
especially with a new partner.
Mhm.
And if we can kind of reframe that, and I always love trying to reframe people's mind to take away from the orgasm, like, not take away from it, but that's not the holy grail.
Mhm.
If we get to orgasm, awesome. that's fabulous. But that's not the only reason we have sex. We have sex for pleasure, for connection, for, our relationship. And I think if we take, I have to have an orgasm, I have to give my girl or my partner one orgasm, five orgasms, whatever. If we take that off the table, it removes some of that anxiety and we can really experience more of the pleasure and explore with each other more
Mhm.
than checking boxes until we get to the orgasm.
Yeah, I tell people that focusing on the orgasm is like eating a four-course meal and focusing on dessert. It's like you miss, the appetizer and the palate cleanser and the wine and the
Mhm.
champagne and the bread and the butter. It's like if you just focused on dessert, it's like, you're missing all the other stuff. Often women will, it's more, orgasm is more important to guys.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's social conditioning or physical wiring, but often women will say, it's not that important to me if I don't have an orgasm.
Mm,
And I tell guys, it's like, believe her. Because
mm,
sometimes the energy can be so intense and the intimacy can be so deep, the emotional connection can be so good that the orgasm, it's like, you can have great sex without an orgasm. If you
mhm,
have one, great. If you don't have one, it's okay. The
mhm.
tension builds and you'll have an even bigger one next time. It's like, don't be hung up on the orgasm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are some men, in my world of where I see guys that don't orgasm easily. Either they're on ADHD medication, which can interfere with that, or a different medication that can interfere with their ability to achieve an orgasm. Maybe their testosterone is low, whatever it might be. And we'll really talk about that for them too, because a lot of times their partner will say, you don't want me enough. I'm not good enough for you, things like that. And that has nothing to do with it.
No.
And so we'll talk about that too, that each session doesn't have to end in the orgasm for him because that's difficult for him, but he just still wants to be a part of it and wants to do it regularly. And maybe he'll only orgasm every third or fourth time, and that's
Mhm.
okay. And I think, I've had to re-educate a lot of partners that if your partner doesn't orgasm, it's not your fault necessarily. Yes, you need to talk and you need to do the things that help each other and all of that, but it's just not going to be knocking it out of the park every single time.
Yeah, if your partner takes it personally when you don't have an orgasm, that really adds a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
And it's not about that. But I do get that a lot. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
people who say, he doesn't orgasm and I don't, and I don't feel attractive or
Mhm.
vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
personal.
Right. And it really I will tell guys at appointments, bring your partner to the follow-up. Do you need me to write down it's not your fault and signed by Dr. Stephanie because I will.
And also some people are more easily orgasmic than others. I mean, some people can have
Absolutely.
multiple orgasms at the drop of a hat. Some people can think off. They can just like think about
Mhm.
sex and like flex their thigh muscles and have an orgasm. Some people will come once and some people will come lots of times and it's just everybody's different. There's no it's not a function of their lover. I mean the lover has something to do with it, but
Mhm.
it's not a function of your lover. It's like everybody's wired differently.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the other things that couples are coming in for that inevitably you end up having to help them with the sexual part because these other issues have then evolved into where they're not having sex?
A lot of couples say, we've got one, two, three kids and or, we work too much and we don't have time or, I go to bed early and he goes to bed late and it just means they haven't prioritized it. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but but then the question is why have they not prioritized it?
Mhm.
Maybe he doesn't do foreplay. Again, I'm assuming a heteronormative
Sure.
model just for the sake of this conversation. That's not always what's happening. But if he's kinda, lazy about foreplay, or
Mhm.
he feels inadequate and he doesn't do it, or, she has poor hygiene and he doesn't wanna do it could be any number of things. And so she's not getting aroused enough, and so she's not getting a lot out of it, and then
Mhm.
she's not in a big hurry to do it again, and it looks like she has low desire. She
Mhm.
doesn't. She just has a partner who doesn't do foreplay for whatever reason. I've heard years ago somebody said, why do women fake orgasm? Because men fake foreplay.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, it's
very generative, but
It's a
yes.
stereotype.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
stereotype, yeah, but
Yeah,
so
that's
there's lots of
interesting.
reasons. Yeah.
How do you help couples that you're saying have like the kids, right? They've got multiple kids, they're running to sporting events, whatever. How do you help them kind of navigate finding and making priority of sex a priority?
Well, here there's a bit of a cultural difference because in America, parents sleep with their bedroom door open, or if they close the bedroom door, they don't have a lock on it. The
Mhm.
kids are sleeping in their bed. The kids have access to the parental bedroom. In France, it's different.
Hmm.
The way I grew up, it was very different. And so couples or they have the master, maybe they have a really nice house and they have the master bedroom and there's a TV in the master bedroom and the kids come and watch TV in the master bedroom.
Mhm.
I'm like, or they come use the shower in the master bathroom. I'm like, use your own shower and go watch TV in the living room. Close and lock your bedroom door and say we're having mommy and daddy time. Say something age appropriate
Mhm.
and just claim your time.
Yeah.
And so what if the kids know you're having sex? So
Yeah.
what? How do you think the kids ended up here? So it's
So
like that's
true.
part of owning your eroticism. So we're gonna have mommy and daddy time.
Mhm.
And we don't unless somebody's bleeding or the house is burning, don't disturb us. We'll get back to you in like an hour or so.
Yeah.
So parents don't claim their space and they don't claim their time.
Mhm.
When you have, an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old who's still sleeping in the parent's bedroom, it's like, why? What's the
Yeah.
benefit? Maybe she doesn't want to get it on, and she's
Mhm.
only too happy to have the kid in the bed to cuddle.
Yeah.
And the kid's happy because the kid's getting attention.
Right.
So, what's the payoff? It's like if there's all these reasons why you can't because you have kids, what's the payoff?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I've always kind of kept is my bedroom sacred. I didn't even have, and this might sound over the top, but I didn't even have pictures of my kids in my bedroom for the
No.
longest time. I have a couple now only because my daughter graduated and we had tons of pictures printed off for graduation and things like that. So I do now, but for the longest time, I didn't have any of that in there because it was my space
Yes.
and my partner's space, And so I didn't want I didn't wanna be having sex and look next in my there's a picture frame of my 2-year-old daughter, I
Yeah.
didn't want that. And so it's always been a sacred place for me, but I absolutely understand what you're saying because I have plenty of friends over the years that have done, co-sleeping or their door's always open, the kids come in and go as they please. And I think it's very important to set that time. I had friends when we were growing up whose parents had Sunday afternoon nap. And we always just thought it was Sunday afternoon nap until we were all in high school. We were like, wait a minute, that's not a nap that's happening
Great.
there.
Good
But we
for them.
didn't know when we were little.
Yeah.
And you don't maybe necessarily want to have that conversation with them. But then
No.
once you figured out, you're like, yeah, whatever, good for them.
Yeah, and it's not, feng shui is this, I don't know enough to say, but it's this Chinese art science about, like how to optimize space and,
Hmm.
what's appropriate and how to make your space sort of most support, your goals. And it's
Hmm.
not feng shui to have pictures of your kids in your bedroom. It just isn't because it's not
Yeah.
it's not a kid's space. It's a grown-up space. It's an adult
Yeah.
couple space. So you have your kids' pictures in the other rooms, not in your bedroom.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to do things and to set those boundaries and to set them when they're younger. And it is tough. Sometimes it's real tough. You've got the kid that's going to scream and cry, but if you do it for several days in a row, you're going to break that habit a lot faster than if you just keep giving in. And you really do need to reclaim that with your partner and have that time and space. So, if we kind of switch gears to the couples you were saying are now empty nesting, they've raised their kids, they've had, less than ideal time to have sex for many years because of chasing kids around. How do you help that age group of parents kind of reconnect and find that desire for each other again?
Well, um there's two different kinds of those couples. There's the couple who really were only in it just because of the kids, and they've been biding their time to, end the relationship. And
Hmm.
they don't have a lot of motivation and they lost interest a long time ago. And they've just been partnering to raise the kids and, take care of the
Hmm.
family. So those I can help them sort of come to terms with that. I
Mhm.
can help them part amicably, and I can help them get clear about why things went sideways and what their part is so that they can set themselves up for success in the next relationship. So that in the
Mhm.
next relationship, they don't go pick the same kind of thing they just picked that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then there's couples who really have focused on the kids, out
Mm.
of love and out of commitment to family, and have been sort of trying to keep the fires, going, but
Mm.
haven't quite. And now they're like, okay, great. The kids are gone. Like, let's get it on. Like, how
Mhm.
can we make this better? And there's all this stuff that maybe we don't know how to talk about it. And maybe bodies have changed. And maybe sexual appetites or proclivities have changed. And they need to, sort of relearn how to talk about it,
Mhm.
and maybe there's built up resentments, maybe
Sure.
he was unemployed for a couple years and she was the breadwinner, or maybe she's been depressed and she's been in bed and, she's sort of like, checked out of family life, or,
Mhm.
maybe somebody had an affair and they've just sort of been like, quietly smoldering, but
Mhm.
they haven't really dealt with the gaping wound.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's the ones that are like, really, no, I'm out of here." And there's the ones that are like, "No, really, let's what do we need to do to make this even better?"
Yeah, absolutely. And so is it helping them kind of reconnect in other areas first and then bringing the sex component in? Or are you just sending them away for a weekend and telling them to like go get out of town and figure it out? Or how are we kind of progressing with that?
No, because sex isn't a doing thing, it's a being thing. So they have to figure out how to be
Mm,
together.
I love that.
And then there's body image stuff too that comes in,
Hmm.
sometimes with aging.
Yeah.
And making friends with your body and with your level of eroticism. It's a
Hmm.
being thing. It's like, do you like yourself? Do you
Hmm.
like your body? Do you like your life? Yeah, no, it's not a doing. It's not just go rent a romantic hotel and get it on, because that's a setup. That's a setup.
Yeah.
That's like the Valentine's setup. It's Valentine's Day. Let's just do it. It'll be great. The whole rest of the country is doing it. Let's like, no,
Yeah.
that's just, yeah,
Yeah. Like the
that can
birthday
be hard.
blowjob, the anniversary. Like, yeah. Like, let's do this on a regular basis, not a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You also mentioned that you get a lot of couples where the woman is going through menopause, perimenopause, menopause. So women at that point are going through a lot of hormonal changes. Our bodies are changing, our body image is changing, our desire level is changing. And sometimes that makes us want to smother our partner, and sometimes that may make us want to love our partner. So, how do you help couples in that phase stay true to each other, stay involved with each other, and not let the wife murder her husband?
Well, one of the first things I do is talk to them about hormones and tell them to go to their primary care and get some lab work done
Hmm.
and get their hormone levels checked. And I talk to them about systemic hormones
Hmm.
and compound pharmacy, because,
Yeah.
Western medicine only has a very limited toolkit. And I talk to them about vaginal
Hmm.
estrogen,
Yep.
which is not always suggested to them, because some doctors assume that, you're menopausal, you will just put you out to pasture. And,
Hmm.
and so again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I will make recommendations.
Yeah.
And don't get the nasty, greasy stuff that's gonna, like, dissolve, and you wake up in the middle of the night and your thighs are all greasy. And
Yeah.
it's like, she's not gonna go down on you. And it's like, but you just don't feel sexy. It's just like, no.
Yeah.
So I sort of talk to them about some products that are more optimal than others. I
Hmm.
recommend, I'm not a gynecologist. So that's one thing. And so while I'm talking to her, he's starting to get a little more hopeful, like, oh, maybe it won't hurt so much and we can,
Hmm.
do it more. So I talk about that, and then I ask women, often around menopause, women sort of reevaluate their life,
Hmm.
and men, the years that they have left, and how do they want
Yep.
to live them? And are they happy with their life? And do
Hmm.
they want more expression in certain areas of their life that they don't have?
Hmm.
And also, This is a tricky one because sometimes, a couple's been having sex the same way. Couples default to like what I call one or two basic choreographies.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, you're fucking like bunnies, you're trying everything. And then you sort of like figure out what works best and you kind of stick with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been doing that for like 25 years. And all of a sudden, she's like, nah, not so
Mm-hmm.
much. And the guy is like, well, I've been doing it the same way all this time. Like, how come it worked before and it doesn't work now?
Right.
And if the guy can't pivot, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
more difficult. But if the guy can hear that maybe she wants to be touched differently,
Mm-hmm.
maybe she wants more sensual touch, maybe
Mm-hmm.
she wants more eye gazing, maybe she doesn't want what you've been doing for 25 years, maybe she hasn't wanted it for 15 years, but she just didn't say because she didn't want to
Yeah.
hurt your feelings. And women tend to want a different kind of contact. They want more emotional attunement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which is something that people are more capable of with age. But so some guys can like hear it and not take it personally and adjust and provide
Mm-hmm.
pleasure for their partner that way, because guys want to provide.
Yeah.
But if the guy can't pivot, it's like, well, this is the way I do it and like it'll lump it, then
Yeah.
it's a different conversation.
Yeah. It's interesting because, we always hear this midlife crisis phrase. And I think it's like you said, it's more of an evaluation. Okay. I've lived 40, 45, 50 years, whatever, and I've got 30, 40, 50 years left.
Yeah.
And am I happy with the way that my life is, or what do I want to change? I don't have to stay in this town, this job, this whatever, because I'm not providing for kids anymore. So having this X amount of income maybe isn't as important anymore, or having a certain schedule isn't as important anymore. And so there's a lot of reevaluating outside of a relationship, just as a human being. And I think there's a lot of reevaluating on the inside. I also liked that you said how, for her, for hormones, huge hormone, person here. And, I treat patients with that. And so, yes, absolutely go get your hormones done. If your primary care or GYN doesn't do them, go find someone who does.
Yes.
Because there are plenty of us out there now that do this, but
Yes.
not everyone does do it. So if
Mm-hmm.
your provider doesn't, that's okay. We weren't taught this in school. We
Mm-hmm.
had to go get extra certification and education in this. So, you can go find someone that is good at it. And I think then it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with self-exploration. Okay, I acknowledge that my body's changing and the way that you're touching me isn't what I want anymore. So let me take some time and figure out what the hell I do want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that especially in certain phases of our life, postpartum where there's a lot of changes going on, menopause where there's a lot of changes going on. For men, I mean, their hormones shift as they get older.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of figuring all of that out, it's important to take that time and to take that energy to each other to figure out how that still works for you guys.
Absolutely. We're on the same page.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Six. You have brought such a great conversation today. I want to give you some time here now so you can tell people about what you offer and how they can get in touch with you.
The best way to find out more about what I do is to go to my website, which is dr6.net, and it's DRSIX, DRSIX.net. You can also just Google me, Claudia Six, Claudia Six PhD. I'm on all socials. You can connect to my blog through my website. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, most of what I do is these days is counseling. I do some webinars and some public speaking, but the best way to find me is my website, DRSI. In fact, it's right there. Look.
dr6.net. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. You have just been absolutely joyful to talk to and to get your experience from. And for all of you listening, if you do have hormone concerns, you can go over to my website, reviveish.com, and schedule yourself an appointment. And we can talk about your hormones and sex life. And everybody have a great week. Go have some fun between the sheets. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthe sheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and go have some fun between the sheets.